Hey. A very good morning and a warm welcome to all delegates joining us today on this online platform for Week 10 series Build Safe and Secure Bharat, a 25 weeks purely knowledge sharing webinar series which has commenced from 26th of July 2020 and has been successfully progressing each Sunday. We are thankful for all your support, patience and personal time for joining us today. We are sure you will find this worthy and are excited as well as curious to attend the webinar. In case you have any questions or queries, we request you to please type using the Q&A or raise hand. During the webinar, also keep an eye on the chat section for links on our previous sessions and to join East Core Group community for case studies, newsletters, advisories on fire safety security. The session will be led by Mr. Hemant Khadse, our Group CEO. Before we begin, let us proceed with a small prayer.
असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः Come on, chant this mantra. असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः.
Very good morning, everyone. Welcome back again with week 10 series, week 10 episode on Build Bharat initiative that we started 10 weeks before. And I really thank you very much for all the support, all the time that you are investing and being with us in this journey of awakening the knowledge in terms of fire safety security. In fact, if you ask me, it is a truly transformation for us as a team, as an organizer also, what we are actually pre-COVID scenario and post-COVID scenario, and specifically with this initiative, we could see that transformation in everyone's mind, not only the people that who are actually with us coming every Sunday, but even what we as a team are also feeling that vibes and awakening that so much of knowledge was available with us, but we were not actually using that for benefiting the community. And it's the COVID that moment has come wherein we are able to use that opportunity, maybe by choice, by compulsion, whatever it may be. But then idea is that with this kind of initiative that we have started, it is really, really helping all our community, because this is a topic wherein people were actually only having an excuse of time. They had an intent. Almost most of the people, if you ask in past, they said that yes, we wanted to understand this topic, we wanted to gain more understanding, but today is not a time. And now if we are again having an excuse, not getting that allocated time on Sunday, spending 1 hour, 1.5 hours, then probably it is the intent which is not there. It is not a time that we have an excuse. So it has been a lot of insight that we have started with from beginning, joining each like a petal and making this as a kind of a one piece at the end of 25 week, that people can actually find value in it when they actually understand insight of it, not just on overview, but basic understanding of fundamental of terminology, why we should do what we are doing. So whole intent or whole content that you see so far, it is not actually in a conventional way or a traditional way that we are looking at. We are trying to focus on basic fundamental, clarifying that ignorance or darkness that we have as a fundamental, as a um, basic understanding level, wherein it gives you opportunity to know more. Because once your fundamentals are clear, once your clarity is there, then probably you can actually on your own, you don't need anybody's assistance in understanding that more in detail. So whole our attempt is basic, in every session that we wanted to have, that we wanted to get a fundamentals clear, terminology clear, applications clear, so that we can actually have our own journey independently and take this ahead. And not only this knowledge should remain with you, you become a trainer in your organization that you are working with, so that this uh, knowledge lamp can actually spread the knowledge further beyond the boundaries. So with this note, let me just recap what we discussed last. The important piece that we discussed last was understanding the relation between engineering with science and technology. We always often use the word engineering, but where it is coming from? So it is coming from the nature that you see around, and that's what we call as a science. So fire safety is nothing but a science that we need to understand as a nature. And when you try to figure it out, observe those nature, then your fundamentals will be clear. Automatically you will start using that knowledge as the wisdom. You will use that knowledge as a scientific knowledge and come up with your own world, creating the new dynamics into this nature. And that's how the design gets evolved. That's how the new codes, new systems, new process gets evolved. And that's how it get transferred into a technology. So called, we physically we can feel, touch, and use the product, the system, the technology. And it is nothing but an true application of engineering. So when you use engineering in practice, that's how it get transformed into technology. So this is all about your knowledge, wisdom, creating that, using that knowledge to create some new world and solve the problems that actually your organizations need. So important piece that we discuss, which is the whole crux of the last session, was that when you look at this as a piece as fire safety, it has a very higher purpose. It has a very big purpose. At your organizational level, if you look at it, it's creating a value in terms of social value, in terms of solving the problem of unsafe premises. So you're creating a healthy, safer, well-being environment for all the people around. And that's how you're going to use this engineering. That's how you're going to use all the practices to make that world safer. And that's how you're going to build the organization, your society, your community, and that's how it goes further. And automatically when you start using that as a business proposition, it will add value to your entire business. It will not have any disruption, it will not have any kind of a hindrance, and it will prosper. So when you look at this as an investment, you see a lot of advantages, and that's how you create a value and make more a sustainable business, more sustainable environment that you live in, and give it back to the nature. So this is what ecosystem that we discussed, and this is very important. I want to refresh on this again, because mostly the organization that we have, and if you remember my concept that I remember, I given to you a FOMO concept, fear of missing out. People live in on this only concept called a compliance. And that ignorance level goes so high that even compliance as a compliance will not be able to see it. It's just a paper that you see it, the paper that you can buy, purchase. So you don't have even value of even compliance even when you have ignorance on that particular matter, when your fundamentals are not clear. So every organization actually must be striving for making a sustainable business, making that environment sustainable, making that workplace sustainable by creating this value. So whatever we are discussing in terms of this topic, fire safety security, has this purpose and only purpose. So we looked at the relationship between science, engineering, and technology. We also looked at how problems can be solved using better technology and using right applications of engineering. And we also importantly looked at the concept called how organization actually, when they don't implement right engineering practices, and they fail to engineer the systems, they fail to engineer the culture. The outcome that is desired out of that product will not come when you don't actually engineer the system. So engineering system is very, very important, because if you don't add that engineering sense into the product and system that you have, then probably it will fail. And physically you see a system, but it has a inherent drawback, inherent failures, which is going to be only seen when that comes into operation. So as a common person, doesn't matter you are a technical person or non-technical person, but of course you are a fire safety security custodian of your organization, then definitely you must have this value. You must have this eye for detailing that what is that gap in my industry. And that's how we actually gave a question also to look at in terms of retrospect, to answer it in your organization. So this is what actually the science behind the uh, smoke that we see when there is any fire occurs. What is that science behind? So any combustion that happens actually triggers before an alarm. It gives you an indication that yes, I'm coming. So in the form of smoke, so which human nose and eyes can actually see and smell. So we are going to use that science, making it engineered way, and that's how the evolution of fire and gas detection system gets evolved, the codes and practices gets evolved, the engineering gets evolved, and now further that system equipment becomes more technological friendly, and it becomes more user friendly and gives a lot of value additions, so that it doesn't only give you that basic purpose, it gives you a multiple value and advantage to the user. So that's how the evolution goes in nature. Whether it's a smoke or any kind of a human behavior that you see, it is actually nothing but a science and engineering. So this was a very, very important piece that we discussed last time. Um, and once you understand this concept, you will have totally different mindset in looking at the things that you see and around. Fire alarm system you see around, it's not just a fire alarm device. You see that detector protecting that particular room is actually my human eye. So I can't keep that eye blind. If that eye has some impurities here, I need to clean it. So your treatment goes like a human being to that particular detector. But unless until you understand the science behind it, you'll not be able to understand why I should maintain that detector, why I should keep that detector healthy, why I should keep that fire alarm panel operating and functional and maintainable condition. And this is what the entire fundamentals that we wanted to give it to everyone, so that probably the faith towards system that you have, or system that you maintain, is coming from this spirit. It's not just mechanical attachment. It's a whole different nature relationship that you have with the system, because ultimately that system is going to protect your life and property, like exactly the human being. Yeah. So I don't know whether any of us could actually gather some of the insight which we actually ask the questions, what are my engineering failures in my workplaces? Is any new observation that we had? What is the technology level that I'm actually trying to use, whether I'm outdated, whether I'm updated? So this is how analysis that people have to do. And once you start awakening these questions, once you start asking questions, sorry, the awakening process starts. Unless until you challenge your thoughts, unless until you challenge your existing process, you'll not have that improvement in place. If you consider that my plant right now is well protected, if that is a myth that you are going to carry, it's a wrong myth, because every day there is some change that can happen. There is some updation required. Maybe there is a process change, maybe there is a human sentiment change, maybe there is a methodology that business that we used to do earlier, now what we do is totally different, the content is different, the environment is different. So how do I change my protecting mechanism, my prevention mechanism, and my preparedness mechanism in fine tuning those change that I can see? So these are some of the questions that we asked. Anybody has any thoughts behind before we get into the topic? Maybe I can pick up some of the thoughts in case somebody wants to share something here. Is my voice staggering, Afrin? Mr. Lalit is saying my voice is staggering. So is the
It's
problem?
clear, sir. It's clear.
It's clear? Okay.
Yes.
So Lalit, maybe there is a network issue, but otherwise I will raise my voice level in case you are not able to hear it. Yeah. So any question, Mr. Lalit, Mr. Mohammed? Let me see whether you are. Yeah. So should I unmute? Let me see whether I can unmute. Yeah. Anybody has raised the hand? You can just let me know because I can then unmute. Before we get into the topic. Yeah, Mr. Lalit, am I audible?
Yeah, it is now okay, Hemanji. Excellent.
Okay, so let's move on to the topic that we have today for all of us. Now, so far, whatever journey that we have, now it is coming to the level of understanding in physical, things that you see around. What is that strategy that I need to have in my place, and specifically a fire protection strategy? Let me just stop sharing and probably have interaction one-on-one so that probably we can understand before we get into the topic. When you look at the strategy as a strategy, we spend some time in the component that are required in terms of strategy building exercise. And strategy is nothing but starts with what design or the intent that you want to have in protecting it. Now, if you look at it based on my experience, you can correct me, or maybe you can add value or thoughts. I typically divide three type of organizations. Any organization of despite any size or business or any process that they do, the first category that I see as wherein that organization, that facility, that building, that occupancy, I can actually come up and build my fire protection strategy using prescriptive code methodology. And we discussed what is prescriptive code methodology. That means I can actually relate to my existing codes, written codes and practices, and derive my fire protection strategy for that occupancy. It's very easy because all the constructions, all the content, risk, hazards are all visible, and it is within purview of relating those into my codes and practices. Yeah. So when I look at that, it has become easy exercise for me because I can apply my prescriptive code methodology, derive the fire protection strategy, and then start implementing that. So that's an easy game. But of course, as we discussed, if you recall in codes and engineering, codes and standard episode, your legal requirements, your statutory requirements are inherent. That means that is a basic and minimal. But at the same time, I'm also looking at what are the best code practices are available I can relate to, and I can make as a complete one strategy to suit that facility so that the facility is ready to mitigate any kind of a risk in terms of fire. So this is how we need to build, and this is what the first type of organization that I can see. The second organization, and that's what typically now things are coming into that category, is wherein the construction itself is little extra than what the code is actually permissible to do. I cannot relate every clause by clause going into the books, that means prescriptive code, and come up my fire protection strategy. Like for example, I have a hotel. As an occupancy, I can actually compare and refer codes and standards and come up with a fire protection strategy. But if that hotel is sitting in a mixed use occupancy, that means below to the hotel, I got a commercial place, I got a service apartment, I got a basement car parking. That means I'm going to add a lot of hazards. It's not just one occupancy, it's a mixed hazard occupancy. So in that case, I may have to look at something which is going to be performance-based design. That means I cannot just remain applying those codes and practices which are written in the codes and standard, because codes and standard we already discussed, it's just a generalized way of guideline. It's a minimum compliance. And even in codes, I have mentioned that you can always go beyond. It's written in the code. It's the provision is already there in the code that you can, this is a minimum guideline, and AJ end user is expected to implement in addition to what has been specified here. So the second category that I mentioned here is wherein you need to apply performance-based codes, wherein I need to go beyond legal, even beyond the prescriptive codes and standard. I need to look at what exactly is happening. So I can test the scenarios, I can apply the results, and then apply those results into scientific ways to meet the code's objectives. So this is what performance codes that we discussed and which can be applied to meet that occupancy strategy. There is a third interesting category. I'm sure you must be wondering what is that third category could be, wherein I call as a status quo category, wherein a customer or end user, the organization is actually in a dilemma. They can see that minimum requirement that is applicable to them. They can see also the risk that they have, but still they are not able to do anything that is required to do. So they always remain in dilemma. Neither they will invest anything further to mitigate that risk, nor they will apply the codes and best standard practices. So they will have highest FOMO, fear of missing out factor. And you see most of the organizations actually sitting in this third category, wherein they are not able to identify what exactly I need to do, because you're entrapped into that FOMO factor that it is an expense. Why should I invest in this system or fire protection strategy that I need to have? And finance constraint, budget constraint is the most and critical factor for them to move on. Operational requirement, maybe they have resources constraint. Maybe they say that fire systems I can have, but unless until I got my organization to maintain that, why should I invest on that? So they have hesitation because of the resources constraint, because of the operational requirement. Maybe the facility is pretty old. They have a lot of constraint to move forward and implement the best practices or required systems that are important and critical. But again, it's just because they're constant in terms of operational requirement, in terms of business requirement, they are not able to move on. And lastly, they also find it regulatory compliance is easy to manage. So why should I invest when I can buy that regulatory compliance? So this is a third category, which is most common in nature. And we as a consultant, when we look at this as a facility, we have a big challenge how to derive the strategy. And when consultant community itself get confused further by looking at the confusion of the organization, then look at the what best combination that you can see, right? So there is a challenge. There is a clarity required in the end user mind to have very specific right fire protection strategy. At the same time, there is a clarity required for a fire protection engineer to come up with a strategy which can work, which will not be overly expensed. And that's how the engineering actually plays the role of deriving the strategy that we always talk about it. So let us look at what are the objectives and how do you derive this balanced fire protection strategy. What is the balance? What do you mean by balance? Balance means you are actually balancing the cost and benefit. You're not looking at only benefit and then you end up in more cost, then it becomes a economically unviable situation for end user. So it is very important that both way, the user perspective also has to be balanced. The fire protection engineer view also has to be balanced so that it becomes a win-win situation and we are able to derive the right strategy. So let us look at first fundamentally what are the objectives that we need to take into consideration. First and foremost, fundamentally very clear. Whatever you are going to do in terms of fire protection systems, the first and clear motive is to protect the life safety of the occupant, the people that working in the premises, the stakeholders, the visitors, the contract people, the indirect people, whosoever that actually are going to be attached to that community, to that facility, must be protected at any kind of a scenario. If it is a hotel, guest is their occupant safety. If it is a hospital, patient is their community. If it is an industrial premises, not only just the staff, the contract staff, the visitor staffs, the workers, the supporting staff, whosoever actually are attached to that facility are taken care into this objective. So first and foremost, what is my strategy that is going to take care of this objective as occupant safety? Second, the entire asset that I have, physical asset, maybe property, maybe equipment, the machinery, the whatever asset that you can see, how do I protect that? Even server room protection, actually what you're trying to protect is your intangible assets. Yeah, intellectual property, isn't it? So that's most utmost critical. Why? Because that is the one that actually have no return. Once it is lost, probably there are chances that it cannot be retrieved. It is as critical as human being for specifically data center or for most of the organization that has a very small place, but it is high value asset area, which is server room, control room, plant room are critical, right? So overall, what asset that you have, how I'm going to be protecting against fire, is that my objective. Business continuity. At any point in time, if in case fire happens, I should be able to adequately manage that fire effectively so that my business doesn't disrupt. Business continuity management, that's how the concept is all about. And it is nothing but how you are going to be resilient back to the operation, BAU, business as usual. Doesn't matter, even if there is a fire happens, it gets sorted out. Because there is nothing that you have in control. Fire can happen, small, big. But as long as you know it, and that's what we discussed at length in past episode, so business content is very, very important element, and it should be part of your fire protection strategy. Now, this is what at your people level, at organization level, at your business level. Now, let us look at even outside your premises level. Maybe you are living in a place where you have a threat from adjoining community, adjoining places. So, how I'm going to be protecting from them? Doesn't matter you are a good driver. You have been driving a vehicle, four-wheeler since last 20 years, and you had no accident. But doesn't mean that tomorrow when you get out and start sitting on steering wheel, you have a guarantee that it will not be an accident for you. Accident cannot happen just because of your mistake. It could happen because of somebody else's mistake also. It is exactly applicable here also. There are a lot of areas that you see, industrial places specifically, where they have a threat from outside. Whether it's a residential building in a metropolitan city like Bombay, or there is an industrial place like Vapi, Taloja, where you have units next to each other and they are all sitting on volcano. There are a lot of warehousing that you see, industry, which is the most hazardous in nature, and they are sitting next to each other. In fact, I do visit a lot of places where you have storages occupancy sitting on multiple levels. First floor, a very big data storage place, and on the ground floor, there's a welding workshop. Look at what's a combination, what's a deadly combination that you can see. But unless until you have this view called adjacent property protection in my fire protection strategy, I'll not take that factor into consideration. Maybe my selection itself is wrong of coming to the first floor and building my record storages, because that place has got even permission given to the hot work people, a welding workshop, and unsafe act behavior can happen there. Because of their mistake, I may get affected. So what is my strategy here, taking into that outside my organization level purview? And it's very important that people should look at this aspect, and people miss out this. And again, very important parameter here, that you build a very good strategy, you build good systems, practices, but if you just limit yourself that, okay, I probably can only have a successful evacuation, I can manage this smoke to the level where people are able to evacuate in less than 10 minutes, and then further I don't know what is happening. Maybe emergency light, I don't know, it's there only for 5 to 10 minutes. The firefighters, rescue people who are going to come in, help you to your place in case of a accident, not incidents, they also need to breathe. They also need to have some illumination. They need to also have some access. They also need to have some kind of a mechanism to get into the facility. So what is my strategy wherein I'm going to take that factor into consideration, that whosoever comes in, a local fire tender, whether it is accessible in the gate itself, if there's a evacuation required from multiple floors, is there any window available, is there any refuge floor, is there any chute available, is there any ladder that I can place and take them out? Accessibility. So looking at that aspect also, your fire protection strategy must get included, wherein I'm going to take I'm going to take into consideration how my rescue supporting team coming in from local fire brigade can have a hassle-free operation. I think I shared you in one of the episode that in Navi Mumbai there was a fire wherein firefighters, local fire tender were called upon to the site because of the basement fire was too huge beyond their control. But there was no way that access was given to the fire tender, because there was only one staircase to get in. They had to wait and do trial and error for first 2 days, and then they actually got an entry, and it took almost 13 days plus to extinguish the entire basement fire, because we didn't take into consideration how rescue team is going to help that facility and get an access. Very important piece. And last and final important piece on a fire protection strategy is that, in case like what we are facing right now as a country or as a world pandemic situation, which never anybody had imagined, anything can happen to you as a catastrophic loss beyond your control. Matlab, you have a even fire tender in your place, but it's just not enough. Your local fire tender just not enough, and you can read a lot of news and breaking news in and around in our country, wherein fire tender have to be come in rescue and help from multiple sources, because there is so much of adversity. The level of that accident is so huge that one fire tender is not enough. So in that case, how do I'm prepared in handling that catastrophic loss? Anything beyond, like a disaster. It's called disaster. Incident, accident, and the next phase is disaster, which is beyond your capacity. But you still have to think about it. You can't say, I'm going to watch, let others play. Yeah. So these are the very, very fundamental objectives, and it is important as a user, you must take this into consideration. Doesn't matter you have a consultant on board as a fire and life safety, but are we discussing and are you on one page covering these 7 points? Any questions on this parameter before we um, get into the topic further? I would like to have any question in case you have on so far what we discussed. Yeah. Any hand that I can see here? Okay, so probably if there are no questions, I will then move on to the topic. Type of fire and one second, Mr. Yogendra Singh. Okay, let me see whether I can unmute. Yeah, Mr. Yogendra Singh, you had some question. Mr. Yogendra Singh, can you unmute? I think you have asked a question.
हाँ ओके सर, मैं योगेंद्र सिंह बोल रहा हूँ.
बोलिए.
अच्छा, कैन यू एक्सप्लेन type of fire and extinguishers?
Okay. Yes, I will explain you type of fire, right? Okay. So there are specific. English बात करेगा चलेगा या हिंदी में बात करूं?
चलेगा, दोनों में चलेगा.
So course and standard में there are specific classification of fire has been given. Class A, B, C, D, E.
Yes sir.
वो basically क्या है? Class A माने is basically very minimal, which is coming from paper. if पेपर अगर कोई पेपर चलता है तो उसका प्रॉपर्टीज क्या होगा एट अ वेरी मिनिमल लेवल, सो उसको क्लास ए बोला जाता है. क्लास बी होता है वो लिक्विड से होता है, डीजल, पेट्रोल, विच इज थोड़ा सा हाईली डेंजरस होगा, जो ए से होगा. पेपर से चलेगा, क्लॉथ जलेगा तो उसका थोड़ा सा इफेक्ट कम होगा, बट अगर पेट्रोल जलता है तो उसका इम्पैक्ट ज्यादा होगा, तो उसको क्लास बी बोलता है. देन क्लास सी आल्सो, विच इज predominantly coming from gases or even electrical fire also. To some courts they have considered as class C fire. Then there is a D fire, which is basically out of metal, potassium, or all this metal that we have, which is coming from those commodity, which is considered as class D. And then of course you have class E also. Sometimes people consider as electrical, or sometimes people consider as special hazard. There is a class K also, which is coming from kitchen. आपका kitchen है, kitchen में अगर fire होता है, which is coming from grease and oil, then that is a separate fire. So ये separate ऐसे classification किए हैं कोर्ट्स ने. और उसका मतलब क्या होता है कि भाई आप जब extinguishing system यूज करेंगे, उसके लिए extinguisher specifically,
Yes, sir.
तो कौन सा टाइप का extinguisher होना चाहिए, तो
Yes,
उस
sir.
हिसाब से आपके extinguisher बने हुए हैं. क्लास ए बी सी, वो दोनों तीनों के लिए एक काम करेगा. क्लास सी के लिए CO2 एक्सटिंग्विशर है, वो उसके लिए काम करेगा, या फिर इलेक्ट्रिक फायर के लिए काम करेगा. वाटर अगेन ए के लिए ही काम करेगा. सो जो भी एक्सटिंग्विशर्स आप दिखाई देते हैं आपके सामने ये इंडस्ट्री में जो है, पाउडर टाइप, दैट इज ड्राई केमिकल, CO2, foam, water comes CO2 combination. So all these extinguishers are basically intended to protect that particular fire.
If electrical system is on and fire exists, then what type of extinguishers we can use?
CO2 extinguisher, C type.
C type. Okay, sir.
CO2 extinguisher. Only CO2 extinguishers.
Okay. CO2. Okay.
BCP भी चलेगा, but CO2 is more effective because it is going to be directly attacking that electrical fire. So it will create that smoldering situation where you can douse the fire very quickly.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so let me just talk about and share something. How do you start your strategy? Now, this is the journey that we are starting now. Maybe we'll not finish today. We will have a continuous discussion next week also, because this is a very, very detailed topic and it needs a lot of time and patience. But fundamentally and philosophically, आप देखेंगे, fire safety as a strategy, it can be achieved by two ways. First is that you ensure that don't let the fire happen. Yeah. Create a mechanism or create a prevention mechanism in such a way that you're not letting the fire to happen. So that's a first piece or first area where you can actually develop your strategy. And then second, in case that too still happens, how do I deal with it? So how do I protect from that fire impact when it happens? So this is what you need to develop a strategy for. So you have one prevention strategy, and secondly is your protection strategy. Now prevention strategy, if you look at it in a little detailed way or minute way, you will see that it can be prevented by, again, some three ways. There are three elements which can actually use and prevent and restrict the fire. The first is what? You focus on a fuel. Like what we discussed about the fire triangle, the fuel component. So try and control that fuel itself so that you're trying to eliminate that fuel from burning. So that's the first prevention mechanism. So you focus on fuel. If suppose you have a 200 liter of diesel, see that if it is going to be eliminated and make use of only 10 liter. If your process allows that. Okay. Or maybe if you have something very, very highly hazardous area, can you relocate that area to a different place altogether? So you are trying to eliminate that risk within your facility. So you are again focusing on a fuel, because that's the one that is going to be as a part of fire triangle. It'll take and burn. Secondly, controlling the source of fuel. That means you are going into the ignition level, going to the separation level where you are trying to create a segregation so that the heat transfer doesn't happen. If you have a separation or segregation method in your industrial place specifically, you can actually have a lot of control mechanism. That means you can control and prevent fires. And third is basically controlling the heat energy sources itself. That means you are going to eliminate the heat source, controlling the rate that is going to be forming the energy. Entire source itself is you are trying to control. So these are the three methods that you can actually focus, and it needs a lot of analysis in terms of what is my process, what is my methodology, what is my finished product and raw product. So how this is going to be coming in play, and then accordingly, how can I control my fuel? How can I control my source of the fuel? How can I control my heat energy source of the fuel? Yeah, getting to the bottom of it. So this is all about your prevention strategy. Now, thought may be coming into someone's mind that, okay, suppose I focus and I invest everything that I have and make a very, very robust prevention mechanism, then I don't need to work on a protection. And it's some logically thought process can come in this way that, okay, you invest 100% on prevention mechanism only. You allocate the budget only on a prevention mechanism. You do everything what is required to do for your content, the source, the ignition, and you don't even worry about protection. But that's what, the example that I given you, as if you're a driver, or maybe you have your own car and that you're driving, you must be doing that exercise or driving your own car maybe for many years, and you take utmost care in driving that car on road specifically, whether it's a lane or a highway. But doesn't mean that the accident can happen or cannot happen. Yeah. So there is nothing that you have in a control. Fire can happen any day, anywhere, from any place. There is no system or measures are 100% effective. Very, very fundamental truth that you should write it down. No system. Doesn't matter you invest on most effective or most robust prevention mechanism, but it will still not guarantee you that it is effective when actually incident happen. So it is impractical to completely prevent the ignition of fires in any of the environment, any of the organization, any of the facility. So if your mind accepts that, then you will have a backup measures. Then you will invest on protection mechanism. Yes, I still have my prevention practices, but still something can go wrong. And this is what my backup is. Because there is always somewhere ignition is possible. Maybe there is a liquid that you have got, which is a flashpoint itself is on an ambient temperature. It can take the flash fire. There is no control. So there are many scenarios that you need to take into consideration, where you need to develop a strategy that I have a balanced strategy on prevention, at the same time protection. Now there is a again scientific way of how you manage this protection. We call manage the fire. Let's use the term called manage the fire, and let's use the term for preventing the fire. So when you look into this another piece or right hand, which is protection, where you see that how my protection mechanism, what is my strategy that I can apply. So again, there are two ways of looking at this managing fire. What is the first way? First way is that managing the impact of the fire. Yeah, that means you focus on the content of the, like exactly what in prevention we focused on a fuel. Here in the protection mechanism you focused on exposed, that means the content. It could be your people, it could be material, it could be your operations, fabric, environment, whatever that you have in the premises, you manage that. Or let's use the technical word, move the exposed, you focus on that. So if suppose there is a fire within the premises, I expect people to move from unsafe area to assembly area. So what I'm essentially doing is I'm trying to move my exposed, that means people, from unsafe place to a safe place. How do I do it? That's a different issue, but this is what the ultimate process that I'm going to use it, right? So when my energy or strategy is on content, that means I'm developing a strategy called managing the exposed or moving the exposed. Second strategy in protection component is basically to defend at the place as is. That means even though you expect people to remain there in case of fire, I'm still able to give them safe evacuation in a such a way that emergency light can actually aid them. Or maybe there is a smoke ventilation that I'm going to have wherein it will help them to take the smoke out. Or my automatic sprinkler will come into play. So this is what the strategies that we can develop in your fire protection strategy, and that's how you need to come up with your strategy, which is going to be managing both, that is prevention and protection. Yeah. So how do I do it? That's a question. So let's understand this again fundamentally. When we are clear about fire and life safety objectives, that protecting the life, protecting the property, environment, business continuity is the foremost objective of the fire and safety strategy. My prevention strategy is to focus on my ignition source, the fuel, the heat energy source. Yeah. And then secondly, and most importantly, is anything that can go wrong. If it is so, then what are my control measures? Whether I'm going to be focusing on the fuel in terms of content so that it will not spread further. How do I do it in terms of property, controlling the fuel? We are creating a firewall, two-hour rated firewall, or maybe a electrical shaft that I have, which is going to be steadfast between the fire, smoke, and the lobby. So I'm creating that element called fire door of 2-hour rated, which is going to be protecting the electrical shaft so that the fire, the smoke and heat doesn't transfer. So there is less impact or no impact of heat or smoke transferring into the lobby. There is a fire alarm system that will come into the play, which will actually make the announcement automatically to alert the people. Maybe there is a sprinkler system which will come into the play so that people can evacuate the building very easily. So this is what the essentially the piece that a fire strategy need to have in terms of how I'm going to be focusing on the content, that is move the exposed, or how I'm going to be enable for a building which is going to be tenable during that certain time, in that critical moment, golden time, 10 minutes or say 15 minutes. It will be still safe. So defend in place. So how strong is my mechanism so that it can defend in case fire happens, and it is allowing not to spread the smoke and heat into the respective areas. Now, I'm sure you must be also knowing the fact that managing horizontal fire is easy or managing vertical fire. In a high-rise building, if you see, even the spread goes vertically high, it's a rapid fire. In less than few minutes, you see that the 8th floor fire is actually reaching to the 22nd floor. See all the case studies that you can see around. And managing vertical fire is the utmost critical challenge for fire protection point of view. Horizontally still you can manage because it takes time. You still have some mechanism to play on. You still have some time to evacuate the people. You still have some time to breathe in. But when it comes to vertical, you need to have a very sound mechanism to manage that fire. So this is the very, very critical strategy. And I think if you understand this concept better, I think then it's very easy for you to implement anything that you can implement in your facility. There's no confusion because you know exactly my prevention strategy is also required, my protection strategy is required. Proportion may vary, depends on the place that you are in. Like I'll give example where hospital, where you have a ICUs or operation theaters, you can't play on more on protection because you can't evacuate further. Your prevention has to be very strong so that you are trying to eliminate the source itself. That means you are trying to control what the ignition source, you are trying to control what the fuel, the material, the content, the heat transfer. Like maybe a mental hospital, maybe there is a old age home, maybe there is a prison. So these are areas, nursing home, these are areas where you have to have a balance, but at the same time, you will have to have more play on prevention than the protection. Because you still have some challenges in terms of protection. But otherwise, any other property that you can think of, industrial place, hotels, hospital, you need to have balance both, but maybe protection should be higher. So it all depends on your site facility, and that's how the engineering comes in play. You can't really take a taraju and say that, okay, I need to have 50% here and 50% here. No, 49 and a half here and 51% here. It cannot be done that way. Situation today may be relevant, but maybe after 1 year, it may vary because of the process, because of the environment, because of the condition that you have. So strategy has to be constant evaluation. Again, a very important piece that you need to understand. The strategy that you develop today may be relevant for today, but may not be relevant for life forever. So that's what the constant evaluation, constant audit or retrospection is required to come up and make it more relevant. But if you understand these basics, then I think probably you can play on any active or passive system that you are. So what are the ingredients we are talking about here when it's the protection strategy, and that to move the exposed strategy? First is your life safety system, which is fire alarm system. I'll go a little deeper one by one, maybe whatever time that I get on those elements. But this is a very, very important piece. That's what it's called, life safety system. And most of the challenges sitting here in this particular system. If you have a very rugged, very systematic design engineering involved in making your system, which is fire alarm system, in place, probably it can save many lives. It can save properties. But understand what exactly this is going to do for you. Egress, evacuation. How efficiently are you able to manage your facility well, that in case anything goes wrong, I am able to evacuate my all people without any hindrances, without any obstructions, because everything is in place. My system is in place. My equipments are in place. My emergency lights are in place. My communication is in place. My exit signage are there. My travel distance is taken care. There are many accidents that happens on this particular issue because they are not able to get out. They are not able to find the fire exits on time because the dead end corridor, long dead end corridor, or maybe the travel distance itself is so high or so confusing, it's not directed, it's not intuitive. Then these are the issues that you can see. Egress is going to be the challenge. So how do I resolve those? How do I make the strategy in place which is going to be there? Fire suppression strategy, maybe hydrant, sprinkler, your gas suppressions, whatever that you are going to use as a media to extinguish, right from your first aid extinguishers. What is it that? Is my mechanism ready? Is my system are in place to use those fire suppression mechanisms so that in less than few seconds it going to come in play? Smoke management, which is the most critical, and I'm sure everybody must have realized smoke kills the people, not actually the fire. So how do I manage the smoke? What are my logics and system that are in place, which is going to be having integrated logic, which will manage the smoke ventilation? Now there are two ways of looking at it. When we are looking at smoke here as a protection strategy, is the ventilation that we are focusing. It's not a smoke compartmentation. Smoke compartmentation will come into the prevention strategy, which is going to be containing the smoke in one place. But when it's a protection strategy element or a piece, then you are going to focusing on design engineering of managing the smoke, making sure that you have a right ACH, you have a right ventilation in place, which is going to be coming in place automatically. Your emergency communication system, how people are going to be communicating internally. Maybe there is a PA system available, maybe there is an automatic announcement available, maybe there is a firefighter jack available at various places to talk back. Maybe there is a SOP which is already there, maybe there is an evacuation plan in place. All these things are part of your emergency management system. So these are the 5 ingredients which are basically part of your move the exposed strategy, which is part of your protection strategy. We'll go one by one, but before that, let me also give you a snapshot. We'll keep this piece for next week's session, which is the defend in place strategy, wherein we are talking about fire resistance element. That means the passive component of the building, the fire suppression, wherein you are going to have the automatic operation in place. That means it is going to act very quickly, not even hydrant needs manual intervention. So move the expose is basically your hydrant. You have some mechanism to play with hydrant and hosel system. But when you're using fire suppression system as defend in place strategy, that means you are going to deploy automatic automation into it. No human intervention. The moment there is a sequence already in place, your fire sprinkler is going to be activated. I get an alert. Quick, rapid, instant is what is the strategy here in terms of fire suppression. Smoke management. Now here it comes as your strategy, how I'm going to be managing that ACH, where maybe there is a basement car park and people are able to breathe at the same time they are able to evacuate the building or car park in a very reasonable time period. So this is again a instant mechanism. That means you are going to have an interface from ventilation systems coming in from your CO detectors. If it is basement car parking ventilation, if it is going to be the ventilation automatic activation, maybe it is coming from fire alarm system, that HVAC will be tripping off particular smoke zone. So that integration logic is what is defined in place strategy. You don't need a person to switch on the ventilation systems. It is a delay. You are going to spend 10 minutes to activate it. By the 10 minutes, the smoke has already entered into the lobby. Then what will do? People are trapped, killed. So this is what your strategy is going to be in terms of managing smoke. Emergency lighting, how quickly it is going to come in operation. That's what code says, less than 3 seconds, less than 10 seconds. What's the duration that I have for emergency lighting? Whether it's only for 10 minutes or 90 minutes, or maybe beyond even 90 minutes. Because you expect people to evacuate, not only people to evacuate, people are going to come from fire tender. They also need an emergency lighting to come and get into the facility. So you don't expect that fire can be extinguished in less than 60 minutes. Maybe my plan is in such a way that even if it takes 1.5 hours, including the time of fire and rescue team to come and fight the fire, this emergency lighting is for them. I asked a lot of questions, and specifically on emergency lighting, they said that, okay, yeah, it's there, but it's on DG, and then somebody has to switch on. Yeah, I have a DG, but then it is going to only switch on certain lights, which are, we think that is a critical. And if you switch on that DG manually and check what actually the light fixtures are getting on by standby power supplies, you see that the corridor is missing. Only the computer is operated. Maybe there's a workplace is getting illuminated. Maybe only the CEO office is getting illuminated. Maybe only machinery where you have a very critical operation getting illuminated. Egress is missing. The escape route is missing. The assembly area till fire exit is missing. The extinguisher locations is missing. The manual color point location is missing. So emergency lighting itself is a very, very detailed topic and engineering involved. It is not that you switch on any light and anything light what you think of. There is a science, there is engineering. That's what the code has included parameters to follow. And you need to pay attention to it. You can't say that I don't have a DG. If you don't have a DG, you have to create an investment for it. You can't say that I have a DG for entire facility and emergency lighting is part of it. In fact, code is specifically asking that you need to have a dedicated alternate power supplies to feed all these emergency systems, including your emergency lighting. Maybe your fire pumps, maybe your fire alarm panel, maybe your anything that is critical for you to activate. Maybe PA systems. So emergency lighting is again part of your defend in place strategy. And then last important piece in terms of this strategy is your intercommunication. How swiftly you are able to manage that fire by communicating people internally. You have sophisticated PA system, but automation doesn't work. Then what will happen? You have a manual way of notifying it, but if there is no person manned in that particular place because that place itself is a very congested place or an unknown place, then what will happen? Maybe if you have a person on board sitting next to the PA console, but that person is not informed, educated to manage that communication or emergency communication, again, it's a failure to engineer. Look at what we discussed. So intercommunication is very important because this is a communication that you are going to play in case of emergency, and this is based on this wise people are going to respond. People are not going to evacuate just like that. People are still waiting for confirmation, and confirmation is what? It will come from PA, the public address system, the voice evacuation system, which can be manual, automatic, both. In specifically hotel, guest safety, hospital, utmost critical, schools, colleges, utmost important. So this is what I want to tell you. Any questions till now so far what we discussed? Yeah, Mr. Lalit asked me one story to share on Mumbai fire. That is the Kamla Mills fire, I guess he is talking about, where the incidents happen. And this is my topic, not that I like to talk about it. I feel pain in sharing that example because I had been to that place in less than 24 hours time. Entire campus was there, and I don't know whether the customer is already there in the forum. He was supposed to be. Um, so yeah, whatever we discuss, I mean, the incident that happened, maybe I can just quickly wrap up what Mr. Lalit has mentioned about the incident that happened in the hotel in Kamala Mills in Mumbai in 2016, where rooftop restaurant caught fire, and in the midnight they had no clue, and there were 15 plus casualties, and mostly were there ladies, there were gents also. So if you look at, there is a case study available. Maybe I can share it in the group. If you are there on my uh, Telegram group, please, if you're not registered in the Telegram group, please do join, because we keep sharing all the case studies there, which is going to benefit everyone. So what I'm going to do, Mr. Lalit, I'll share you in the group today the summary of this incidents, and it is a very scientific and detailed case study which is from the Mumbai Fire Brigade. I got a copy of it. I think it will give insight. But moral of the story was a lot of things. Fire exit was a most uncritical thing because it was not planned egress. And if you look at the strategy, what we discussed just now, the strategy was missing is this egress. Had the evacuation would have been successful, probably could have saved a lot of lives. Very simple. But of course, you have to have fire suppression also is one of the strategies that was missing there. There was no automation, there was no integration, there was no communication, there was no emergency communication to guide the people that, okay, don't go this way, go this way. People were actually getting into the restroom areas to protect their life, thinking that I may be saved in the restroom. But had there would be a emergency communication to evacuate and guide the people, we could have saved many lives. So this is what essentially what I'm trying to say here. All the strategy is very, very important. Unfortunately, there are many organizations, they are not able to understand in and out of this what we discussed. Mostly the focus, based on my experience, tell me if I'm wrong, is only given on the active system, which is your hydrant, fire alarm, and sprinkler, and that too only for compliance purpose. Unfortunately, this is the reality. You may be having a fire alarm system, you have an investment there, but you don't have a thought behind what this fire alarm actually is going to do. So I think we are going to discuss fire alarm in a bit, just to take this discussion forward. But I'll quickly start with the process or with the mind mapping that you need to have in selection of the system. And very easy to take that as an example is your fire extinguisher. Mr. Yogendra Singh has asked the questions, and this is what the answer that I wanted to give him now. ध्यान से सुनिएगा जो मैं भी बात कर रहा हूँ. आप एक्सटिंग्विशर भी अगर कोई फैसिलिटी में लगाना चाहते हैं आपके फैसिलिटी में, तो उसका क्राइटेरिया वेंडर के ऊपर नहीं होना चाहिए कि वेंडर के पास अवेलेबिलिटी क्या है, या उसका क्राइटेरिया वो होना नहीं चाहिए कि मेरे पास क्या बजट है. The criteria should not be only purely based on the vendor choice, or criteria should not be based on your budget constraint. Simple example. It is not going to cost much. Few $1,000, you get an extinguisher. But if you look at the anatomy of selection criteria, which is again coming from the codes and standard, but this is gist of it, you'll understand, my God, so much of insight that you need to have in selection of extinguishers. First, what is the agent compatibility? That means if I'm going to use, I'm trying to protect kitchen, should I use DCP? Should I use CO2? What is the agent compatibility? What is the equipment type that I'm trying to protect? Whether it's electrical, whether it's mechanical, what is it that I'm trying to protect for? Because ultimately that extinguisher is going to be used for local area. That means direct into something. So what is that equipment I'm trying to protect? What is the metal that is going to be involved in that extinguisher? Whether it's going to be powder, liquid, what it is, or it is a combination of those. Then it is going to be injecting for which class of fire. That is what we discussed. Class A, B, C. So where is that metal that I'm going to use and which is the class of the fire? That means in my occupancy, maybe I may not have entire facility as a class A. Correct? I will have certain room with a class A, certain room within that. I will have also class C also sitting there. I will have also class E. So there are a lot of combinations. Maybe there is a pantry inside. Class E, sorry, class K. So what are the classification? Do I know that class? Do I pay attention? That is what is going to decide my nature of material to be extinguished. Content I'm going to decide based on this. Then what is my organization? What is the severity of my place? How likely that fire can happen? Whether it's high, moderate, low. Because you must be knowing that extinguishers are a first aid device. That means it is going to be used only in case of an incipient stage of fire, very beginning, initial stage of fire, not at the advanced stage of fire. If you have a big tank farm area and you are going to use 6 kg DCP, does it have any linkage? No. But you can see some surprises that happens in the industry this way. Because what is missing? They are not understand the potential severity of the fire. Capability of the organization. Whether my organization is small, maybe I don't think so I'll be able to do regular training because my people are going to keep on changing. My receptionists are going to change. My security guards on contract basis. I don't know how many times I can give. So is it people are going to operate without training or with training? If I'm expecting the receptionist is going to be operating extinguishers, should I keep 6 kg extinguisher or should I keep 2.5 kg where she can actually easily hold it and use it instantly? It doesn't require any training. So you have a lot of combinations. You have very now, in fact, there are a lot of fancy extinguishers happening in the industry. I don't want to talk about it, but you have a lot of choices. And the choices are basically maintained for what? How comfortable are you going to use that in case of emergency? Yeah, training or without training. Environmental conditions, whether it is going to be corrosive condition, then should I go for a brass component or should I go for aluminum? What is that? Whether it is for a confined area or whether it is for a outside area. Now I'll give an example. If it is going to be say loading unloading area, yeah. If you use carbon dioxide, then probably it will not work because of the wind conditions. DCP is going to be more effective there than the CO2 extinguisher. Although both can actually work if as long as you have certain electrical component there involved and you're trying to protect that equipment. But you have choice to use DCP or to use CO2. If it is going to be wind that as a criteria, then I better go for a DCP than CO2. What are my corrosive environment? What are my freezing? Maybe there is a area which is cold storage. Should I go for a water extinguisher there? No way. Yeah. Or maybe there is a freezing environment itself outside. There is no way that I can use water. Although I'm trying to protect the paper fire or cloth fire. So what is the environment condition? The initial cost, which is also, we take that as a prime concern. But again, in that cost parameters, what is the size, what is the agent type, what is the quality of extinguisher, do I get a support for refilling, whether do I get a hydro testing done or not, what is that ingredient? Life cycle cost, inspection, maintenance, is it going to be charging me more than industry standard on only the refilling, or do I get a right support from them? How accessibly, how refilling can be quickly done, how hydro testing can be done, how professionally they are able to do the maintenance contract. This is again your cost component, which is the purchase guy need to look at it. Recharging, cost of agent, in-house versus contract. And then of course, standardization. That means if suppose I have a big facility, I have 300 DCP, I got a lot of variants. How can I standardize in a such a way that I am able to manage my inventory so that my maintenance cost becomes less? That's again strategic call that we have to take. So this is again a holistic view. I just give a piece of information here, taking the example of extinguishers, but I want to create that mindset in you so that you can apply this logic to every system that you have. It could be fire alarm, it could be suppression, it could be gas detection, it could be anything. And same apply goes everywhere. So I just wanted to give you this information so that you can actually create that discipline in you that only cost doesn't matter. It is all your applications. And this is all about application engineering, nothing else. Any questions on this? Okay. There is a question from Ayush. Do you suggest sprinkler will applicable in IT company? I think it can damage electronic system. Please suggest. Good question. A very good question. There are a lot of people who are actually asking this question and they don't have right strategy. So there is nothing that I can answer you straight. I'll tell you the ways and means to deal with electronic, electrical systems or electrical storage area like server room or data center, whatever that you talk about in IT company. First and foremost, water can be used or not. Technically, water can be used by codes and standard also. In US, there are many data centers who have put in into their brand standard that server room or data center will be also protected by a pre-action water suppression system. So there is a specialized extension to a sprinkler system called pre-action system where water is going to be used even in protecting data center. So it all depends on your strategy. Maybe the fire pre-action system or using water could be your second layer of protection. Maybe first layer you want to have as a gas detection, which is more reliable, more friendly, although it is going to be expensive. But then against my risk, it is matching. So maybe my first layer could be having investment on my best fire alarm system. Then maybe a gas suppression systems. On top of it, I can have as a second layer called pre-action water sprinkler system. So to answer your question, water, yes, can be used. There are many data centers, many server rooms are still protected using water. Only caution that they take is that they don't apply only the sprinkler protecting that server, because accidentally also that can discharge and can damage the server. Instead, they apply a logic using integrated the fire alarm, wherein there will be cross zoning, there will be ensuring that in a real fire scenarios only the sprinkler will get activated. And why sprinkler need to activate? Because otherwise anyway you expect that fire to propagate more. Instead I confine it using water there only, and then I can protect my rest of the things. So this is how you can actually manage the data center and server operation. I hope I've answered your question. Yeah, so good. Thank you. A lot of questions are coming in today. I really appreciate it. Mr. Mohammed has asked, could you provide the example for intercommunication system? Good question, Mohammed. Thank you. By the way, you have been consistent listener to us. I really appreciate your investment as a time, Mr. Mohammed. So intercommunication system, there are multiple ways. You can have a fire alarm system integrated with voice evacuation system, wherein you are actually using the speakers to make the auto announcement or manual announcement using the microphone from the control station, from the control room, or plus you can have a firefighter's telephone jack at your fire check floors in the corridor where you expect a fire warden to go in case any alert comes into a specific floor or specific area with the telephone jack, or maybe use the jack there, connect it, plug it into that particular area, and talk back to the main control room saying that yes, this was a fire, it was extinguished using the extinguishers, no worries. So it's a two-way. So it's a talkback, but it's dedicated only for emergency communication. So there are multiple ways. Speaker announcement, or it could be one way, that is paging, automatic manual. Talkback could be coming in the signals from field to the control room and then control room to the field. So it's a communication that we are going to establish. There are, again, as an extension, you can actually interconnect your EPBX system using the PA system where you are actually making use of integration, or maybe voice or IP also now coming in play, where you are actually transmitting the calls automatically, where people will get a call from their landline or mobile that yes, there is a fire, please evacuate. Simple. So there are multiple ways, but here all the essence that we are trying to bring it on here in emergency communication is that how swiftly, how quickly you are able to communicate with the right intent, so that the people don't go into panic. They get a right message. Maybe there is a stage that they have to wait for next announcement. So if the announcement is there for them to stay calm, wait for next announcement, maybe till that time they are checking whether the fire alarm is giving a false alarm or real alarm, and then they are prepared for this. So it is a process rather than getting into panic and directly evacuation mode. So intercommunication, this is what it means. So I hope I have answered Mohammed. Mr. Srinivas, lift lobby pressurization, how it works in case of fire? Very, very good question. In fact, you took my point, which is there in the presentation, but I can answer it right away here because it's a very, very good question you asked. Now, first of all, understand what is pressurization. Pressurization is the one that is a engineering way that you are creating a positive pressure in that particular area, which is restricting smoke not to enter into that area. Like your stairwell lobby, like your lift lobby, interfacing with your stairwell lobby or maybe corridors. So every zone is a separate zone. And specifically in a controlled building, controlled climate building, where your corridors are air conditioning, your lift lobbies are air conditioned, your stairways are maybe even not naturally ventilated, it is mechanically ventilated. So therein pressurization actually makes a lot of sense. So how it works? It works that you create that pressurization mechanism talking to what? Fire alarm system. The moment there's a fire alarm indication coming from the specific floor, specific corridor, that, or maybe there is a guest room. I'm just giving example as a hotel so that you can relate and you can apply to any place. If there is a fire from that specific area, the fire alarm panel will sense it first. It will automatically ignite signal to activate your pressurization fan system, so that your lift lobby or stairwell area will start pumping in the air. It will build the positive pressure so that the smoke which is now coming into the corridor will not enter into the lobby, so as into the stairwell. Why it is important to create positive pressure there in that lobby? Because people are trying to use that lobby and staircase for evacuation. So it must be safe and speedy evacuation. Smoke is the danger. Smoke is the killing item. So what we are trying to do in this mechanism, that we are going to restrict this smoke not to enter into the area which is going to be egress or safe access for people to evacuate for certain period, and that's how the logic gets built up into the system. So I hope, Mr. Srinivas, I've answered it. In case I'm not, just let me know. I can unmute it. Mr. Suresh, is there any system available to maintain oxygen level below so that the fire will not start it? Yes. I mean, uh, there are a lot of research going on in terms of only maintaining oxygen level, but fundamentally and philosophically or psychologically, let me tell you that oxygen, being an oxygen, is actually required for human being to breathe and survive in case of fire emergencies if it is contained. At the same time, oxygen is going to go against the fire. So oxygen is actually the critical element and common element at the same time for both fire and human being. So it's a big challenge whether if there's a natural ventilation, so are you going to allow oxygen to come in because it's naturally ventilated and fire to propagate, or you're going to use natural ventilation to take the smoke out in case of fire and have the people evacuation safe. So again, this comes as engineering. So there is no straight answer unless until we look at the facility, we look at the whole economy, whole anatomy of the project. You can decide what is the permissible limit of oxygen that I can maintain. I mean, it is coming in the form of ACH, air change ratio. Yeah. So you need to have a right ventilation mechanism so that not only the occupant, even the firefighters come in, they have to have a fresh air. So in HVAC system, it is always advisable to have even fresh air to come in, because you can't only take out the air and then take every oxygen, then people don't have anything to breathe in. So whatever is the minimum level that is required for a person to breathe in, which is 22% plus, will be still maintained for some time till the time my evacuation is successful, or till the time my fire rescue people are going to be there in operations. And that's how you need to build that system. And HVAC system actually plays a bigger role in managing the air, whether it's a fresh air, taking the smoke extraction out, or your ventilation. All these things are part of all the fire and life safety mechanism, so that people can actually take the evacuation route successfully. Thank you. I'm really encouraged. A lot of questions today, a lot of interaction. So I think group is shaping up. So time is up. Actually, I had a lot of content, but I don't know to rush and just pump in the content just for sake of doing it. I want you to be clear in understanding why we are doing and what we are doing. What is that system that I need to work on so that I can build that right fire protection strategy in the place that I'm in, so that we can make your fire strategy very, very rugged, at the same time very healthy, so that any eventuality that can happen, we are still able to manage that fire element swiftly and steadily. So if there are no questions further, Fireball is a good system to replacement. I am not a big fan of Fireball, because unless until it's been accepted by local codes and standards, let's not use that as a primary source. You can have an additional Fireballs wherever you want, no problem, but do not replace with your conventional fire extinguishers. Okay. So I know there are a lot of people who are excited about Fireballs by looking at the 2-minute video, how we can throw and extinguish it. It looks adventurous. So technically, if you ask me, unless and it has been proven acceptable in the local courts and standard. Let's not replace your standard extinguishers with fireballs. Go with fireball as an add-on, as long as it meets your budget, uh, allows you to accommodate those extra element, and it can really add a layer to it. But don't go only for fireball as a replacement of extinguisher. So that's not my suggestion, personal suggestion. Again, you can take decision based on your decisions. Um, okay, so definitely, Mr. Lalit, we will talk about pressurization next week when we meet up, because next two weeks specifically, I'm going to be focusing on all these two elements: protection and prevention, because these are the most critical element for any organization to strategize their plan and build the fire strategy successfully. Because if they fail in understanding the fundamental, then that one missing link actually can miss out the entire game altogether. Then once we are finished with done with the fire strategy, I'm going to spend one session only on security strategy, which is also complementing the safety as such. And that's how we are going to be ending the first phase of our series as design and plan phase. Then we'll enter into a construction phase, implementation, execution phase. And therein we will spend maybe 5 to 6 weeks there. And then we'll get into operation testing and maintenance cycle. And that's how I'm going to be taking you all your journey in a very, very meaningful way, so that every piece you can add, and it will add value to your organization. So with this, let's end this session. I still encourage everyone to spread the word in the industry, so that more and more people can benefit for this session that we are doing it, and it is not costing them unless until the time is a factor for them to invest. So if there's a time not a factor or constraint, please ask your friend community to join in, and we are more than glad to uh, be with them for all coming. So let's conclude today's session with national anthem. You can stand up.
जनगणमन जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे
Thank you so much for joining in. Please join our Telegram group so that we are updating your all updates here. See you next Sunday, 11:30. Take care. Stay safe.